going on, guys? Welcome back to this week's episode of Outside the Arena with Rob and Griff. I'm Griff and Senek, joined by my co-host Rob Goldberger, and we're back this week. I know we took the week off last week. Apologies for that. I was dealing with some medical issues that I had to take care of, so fortunately we could not film the episode last weekend. But to be honest, we didn't miss too much, so it was a good weekend to miss. But we're back this week. If you haven't already, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel if you are new. And we've got some fun stuff to talk about. Maybe not fun in nature, but there's been some pretty significant news, you could say, in the last 2 weeks. So we're going to jump right in, and we're going to talk about something that's happened a little while ago. So we're not going to spend too much time on it. But essentially, everyone, if you're watching this podcast, you probably know the news. Deshaun Watson finally has been officially suspended 11 games. He also received, I believe, a $5 million fine. So obviously, this is an increase from the 6 games that Judge Sue Robinson recommended a little earlier in the month. So Deshaun, he's not going to be eligible, I guess, until, what is it? Is it week 13 against the Texans, which is just, prime NFL, to say the least, with that one. But 11 games, obviously, this is a much bigger impact on the Browns season than just the 6 games. Your thoughts on the whole suspension and obviously the state of the Cleveland Browns we'll get to in a second.
Yeah, I'm not surprised that the suspension ended up being longer. I think the NFL was obviously always going to push for more than 6 games. I think Deshaun Watson himself was even surprised to learn that he got 6 games. He seemed like he was expecting at least 8 games. But yeah, 11 games, I guess, from a Browns perspective, it's not the worst thing in the world when they have him under contract for 5 years. And it does dramatically change, the outlook of their season, because Griff and I were talking about how they had a lot of winnable games with Jacoby Brissett at quarterback, in those first 6 games of the season. But obviously now, Deshaun Watson is missing over half the season. So, in terms of 2022 Browns outlook, it is huge news. But, I think the Browns will honestly take it.
Yeah, this is obviously, like you said, it was always probably going to be longer than 6 games. I think everyone involved is just happy that it's over with at this point and that there's no more question mark. Like, this is done. It's 11 games and that, it is what it is at this point. Obviously, I think the Cleveland Browns season is in huge jeopardy. I don't know. I would, if I had to say right now, I'd say they're not going to be a playoff team just because 11 games of Jacoby Brissett, even with a good defense, even with that rushing attack, I just don't think he can get it done. We saw Baker Mayfield last year was, pretty bad, obviously banged up, and they weren't able to make the playoffs. Now, maybe they will if Deshaun, comes back and has a really good end of the season. But Deshaun Watson also hasn't played in like 2 years now. So I think for the Browns at this point, what they can take out of it is if this ends up being a lost season, Deshaun Watson will get, I guess, 7 games at the end of the season to play or six games at the end of the season to come in and play and maybe shake off that rust for next season. So at least, he's coming in, he's going to get some game experience this year. Obviously, the whole situation is, it's a sad situation. It's, the events of what has unfolded, not good at all. Very upsetting. And I think it's a tough situation. Absolutely. And I think that the punishment probably should be greater, but unfortunately, the NFL's precedent that they've set has resulted in this punishment being what it is. If the NFL had set a precedent with all these past issues of sexual assault or domestic violence, and people were getting suspended for over like 12 to 16 games in a season, Deshaun Watson would have easily been suspended for the full year, if not more. But the fact of the matter is, some of these guys are getting 4 games, 5 games, 6 games for
Yeah. Reuben Foster comes to mind initially when he came into the NFL. Obviously,
like incidents, like not to the same extent potentially, but similar, I guess, in the category of what's happened with Deshaun Watson. And and that's why it's 11 games and not more. And it's only the NFL's fault to blame for that, because you have this federal judge coming in and ruling, and she's not going to be able to just say, yeah, he should be suspended for 2 years when guys are doing similar things, and the NFL gave 4 years. So at the end of the day, the NFL, obviously they were pushing for more, but this falls on their hands. This is bad precedent set by them, and that resulted in, that they had to come to a settlement ultimately, because Deshaun wasn't probably going to get suspended for the whole year I don't even know who was going to hear his case, but I think that both sides knew it probably wasn't going to be a full year. Both sides knew that, let's just come to terms and save any lawsuits and stuff like that from happening. The NFL's corrupt, though. I mean, there's nothing new about that. And when you see the first game he's coming is at Houston, it's just like, oh my God, like what are we doing here? Like you should have just made it 12 games at that point. Like, oh my God.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said, especially, about, this is the NFL standard, and unfortunately they dug their own grave and now they have to lie in it, unfortunately. But yeah, like you said, I mean, I think it's just such a tricky situation. I mean, it really is. I do wonder in retrospect if the Cleveland Browns could have done the whole thing over again. I wonder if you were to ask Andrew Berry, would you do this whole thing over again? What would the answer he would give you? I wonder what the answer he would give you is. I think as of right now, now
Probably
that
yes.
it's resolved, probably yes. But 2 months ago, I don't know.
I think it'd probably be yes. I think that, look, the Cleveland Browns, say what you want about Deshaun Watson and, the incident. I'm not just,
No,
it's horrible what has happened. I don't want either of us to, it to sound like either of us are saying anything other than that. But the Cleveland Browns, one thing this team has done is they've given second chances. And that's what you hear the owners talking about, Jimmy and D Haslam. They gave Kareem Hunt a second chance. And you look at where he's at now. I mean, a lot of people kind of have forgotten about the
yeah,
incident that occurred, which is, it's just kind of crazy how these things kind of just happen and in pro sports. And all of a sudden these people are kind of, if they're playing well, they're forgiven. And I'm not saying that, like,
yeah, Big Ben.
obviously that these people are like evil people that should be like, I am a believer in second chances myself, so it's obviously interesting, but which is why I think that the Cleveland Browns would probably do this again, because from a football perspective it's the right move to make, because if Deshaun Watson can come back and be the guy he was, Cleveland's got as good a shot as they've had in their history of the franchise to win a Super Bowl with Deshaun Watson. So, it's a football move in that regard, and they believe in second chances. They've done it in the past. They've taken criticism in the past, and they're taking a lot now. And you know, I feel bad for some of the other players on the Browns, because it's probably a lot of unwanted attention, unwanted questions that they have to deal with, but that's the NFL, and obviously we will see what happens, but it's finally over, and I think a lot of people involved are probably happy. Even all the women that sued basically have settled at this point, I think, too. So for the most part, obviously this is not I don't know. I'm just rambling at this point,
Yeah, I,
but
Griff, I understand what you're saying. It's a tough situation to talk about, and obviously, you're not trying to demean anybody, but
yeah,
um, yeah, I mean, it's just trying to think about it from a football perspective.
yeah, it's a
It,
hard thing to talk about from a football perspective, but that's what we're trying to do here. Yeah, but obviously it's going to be Jacoby Brissett going for the Browns, and I guess with that we'll move on here to, we're going to do some projections for the standings today. Obviously, we are 2 weeks today from now. We'll be opening kickoff, which is crazy. We obviously saw yesterday college football kicked off. My Northwestern Wildcats got the big
big
first
W.
W of the season. Um, even near Northwestern, they're a threat to be reckoned with. So maybe they can shake up the Big Ten West. But so yeah, I mean, football is basically back. Obviously, the preseason's wrapping up at this point, but we're gonna go through the divisions. Maybe give our I guess we'll even go 1 through 4. Why not? We'll have fun with it. And next week we'll probably maybe dive into week 1 and also do some fantasy football. I think would be fun to do next week too. So we're gonna do divisions today though. And we'll start off right in the AFC East. Rob, what are you thinking with the AFC East? You can go 1 through 4. 1 through 4, I guess, is fine. Give the projection of
I'll,
the order.
I'm gonna go with the Bills.
Okay.
And you know what? I'm gonna have to go with the Patriots ahead of the Dolphins, even still this year.
Hmm.
And then I'll the third. And unfortunately, Griff, I'm gonna have to put your Jets last.
Oh, you don't think Zach Wilson can get it done? I don't know. I feel like Zach Wilson's got the division on lock.
Here's the here's the thing: a healthy Joe Flacco could lead you to a little 3-0 start.
You never know. Yeah, I mean, the Bills winning this division seems like probably the easiest division to predict in all of sports at this point. Number two and three is going to be very interesting. I think it's going to be very close. Like the Patriots are just a weird team. Like to me, they just didn't get better this offseason. I think if
No,
anything, they're just kind of the same team. Maybe they got a little worse. I don't really know. They didn't really do anything. Their draft wasn't anything impressive. They picked that guy who, that you heard the Rams saying that was like a third or
yeah.
fourth round guy for them.
Away,
But
they traded away Shaq Mason too. For a fifth round pick.
what team is Shaq made? Is he on the?
I Where did they trade him? I know they traded him this all.
Was it the Raiders?
Could be. Not 100% sure.
I'm curious. Sorry, I just want to see Shaq Mason. Let's see. Buccaneers. Oh.
Okay. That makes sense. Bill
The
did
Bucks
him.
just have all these guys on the O line, man. They just have all these guys, even though they're hurt. Like
They're a little banged up there, though.
they are
Sure.
banged up. I'm gonna go with the Dolphins at 2. I think that Miami they played really well towards the back end of last year, and I mean that's kind of been a trend the last few years. They've had really strong stretches. I think that this is a huge year for Tua. I'm not saying I'm believing in Tua that Tua can get the job done. I don't know if they'll make the playoffs. If I had to predict, I'd say probably not, but I think that offense should be really good. I think Mike McDaniel is an offensive genius. I think when you give him Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle to play around with, I think he's going to do some cool, fun things. And I think that Tua, he is pretty accurate in terms of the short passes, and I think they can do some really creative things with him. And I think that defense is underrated too. So I'll go Dolphins 2, Patriots at 3. I just think the Patriots are just like I just don't. There's nothing on that team that just gets me excited.
To
It's
be
just
honest,
boring football.
I kind of think that the whole division is pretty mediocre outside of the Bills. I don't really think any of these teams can make any type of noise.
I think the Dolphins. I think the thing with I think the Patriots, like, there's just nothing on that team that's just like to me fun to watch. Like I wouldn't turn on a Patriots game and be like, and they lost J.C. Jackson this offseason. I mean, totally forgot about that. So they did get worse. I just like with the Dolphins, for example, you got those 2 explosive wide receivers. Like I'm very curious to see how they do. With the Jets,
Yeah,
all these young guys, Sauce Gardner, Garrett Wilson, Brees Hall. Like I think with the Jets, I'm even more excited to just, even though I think the Patriots are going to be better than the Jets, there's just some excitement with the Patriots. I just think they're a average team. I think they're about a 8-9, 9-8 level team. I just don't think they're anything better or worse.
I just Tua is just so painfully average to me. Like this is, I
Yeah,
can believe they're rolling into the season with Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill, and this guy at quarterback. And I understand backing your 5th overall pick. I get it. I get you have to stick with him, especially because you drafted him right before Justin Herbert. That's the other component people forget. But yeah, man, I just don't think Tua is it. I just don't think that
I'm not disagreeing.
they could sneak into the 7th wild card spot, but I don't see them really like. I'll be real. I just don't see them competing with any of the AFC West teams. I think the Bills are better than them. I just don't. I just don't think that this is a team that stacks up with the elites in the AFC at all.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't think that this team is on that level. I just think that I think they're decent. I think that, with those guys on offense, they have a solid defense. I think we could see some, look at what Mike McDaniel, obviously you had Kyle Shanahan there, so it's a tough comparison. But Jimmy
Sure.
G, I mean, he had some explosive guys and look what they were able to do. So I'm not saying that that's going to be the same situation whatsoever or the defense is the same level, but, I think that Miami, I think they're going to find success. I don't think I agree. I don't think they're on the level of those AFC West teams per se, but I think they're going to be threatening for a 7 or 6 seed per se. So that's my take on them. AFC North, this division's really interesting. Every team is you got the Bengals, the defending AFC champs, the Ravens with they're really banged up last year. They're coming back healthy. The Browns, obviously, we talked about, and then the Steelers. It seems like Trubisky is going to start, but Pickett's got to probably eventually take over, you would imagine. But how do you see that division lining up?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to pick the Ravens to win this division. actually. And I'll go through my reasoning after, but I'll just give you the order first. I'll go with the Ravens, Bengals, Browns, Steelers. That'll be an order for me. And obviously, if Deshaun Watson was healthy, it'd be a way different story. But we've already discussed that. I'm a huge Lamar Jackson fan. I think you know that at this point. I think that this guy is just a truly, truly special QB. When he was literally trying to drag them to the playoffs to the end before he got hurt last year. And they were in a good spot actually before he got hurt. People forget that they beat the Chiefs. I just think Lamar like I think this Ravens team is going to be really good this year, and I think Rashad Bateman is actually going to end up having a really special season. Um, the amount of targets he was getting for the amount he was on the field last year was just absolutely crazy. Lamar Jackson loves to find this guy. Obviously Mark Andrews is there, but I'm just a huge believer in this Ravens team, and I honestly think they've had very limited playoff success recently, but I think this is a team that can absolutely win the AFC. And look, I'm high on the Bengals too. Griff and I have talked about it a lot. We're just not sure that this is a team that can replicate its performance, especially in the playoffs from last year. And I really do think the Ravens are going to be much stronger than they are this year. And as with the two teams at the bottom of the division, the Browns sort of a moot point because they don't have their most important player. But the Steelers, man, look, I understand starting Trubisky because he's been the guy in camp, he's been the guy in preseason, he's been their best quarterback, but I don't understand what are you gaining out of starting Mitchell Trubisky? I don't. What else do you need to know about him that already hasn't been found out? I mean, I, I, Mason. Have you ever heard of a more pathetic trio of QBs than Mason Rudolph, Mitchell Trubisky, and Kenny Pickett? And look, to be honest with you, if Kenny Pickett can't beat out either of these guys in camp, and he's seems to be the clear third guy, which is a little bit concerning to me. He's sort of been fighting. He was earlier, I should say, but I mean, I kind of just think I don't know. I'm a little skeptical of the Kenny. Obviously Griff and I, if you remember our draft cards, we were never really big fans of any of these QBs, and obviously the rest of the NFL wasn't, considering Kenny Pickett was the only quarterback drafted before the third round. So I do wonder how that's going to come back, and look for the Steelers. But if he's starting by week 5 or 6, I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, I think that they're just kind of set. They kind of just, I think, decided ahead of time that he was not going to start, and I don't think he's really ever had a true chance, if we're being honest, of starting week 1. I think they've always kind of gone in. I mean, they paid Mitchell Trubisky like 2 years, $15 million. So I think they always wanted to
Crazy, man.
give Mitch a little bit of run there, and then if he struggles, Pickett will be ready. I have the top of this division different. I have it Bengals, Ravens, Browns, Steelers. I just am not a big believer in this Ravens. I just think offensively, I think they're going to be good. I think Lamar Jackson obviously poses a lot of threats. There's just obviously you've got Mark Andrews. Obviously Rashad Bateman's pretty good, but outside of that, who is it? Who's there? Like Devin Duvernay? There's just no guys there. And to me, look, we've seen teams like the Chiefs do it with, but even then they had guys like McCole Hardman is better than what the Ravens have at their number 2. Sammy Watkins they had at times. The Ravens just have no one there outside of Rashad Bateman, who's a second-year wide receiver who he's a good player, but he hasn't really proved anything yet. Obviously, Mark Andrews had a great year last year. His peak of his success, though, was with Tyler Huntley when Lamar was out, and Tyler Huntley was just a Mark Andrews. He must have had him in fantasy because Mark Andrews put up 30 points a week in fantasy. But I think the Ravens are going to be good. I think they're going to be really good defensively. I think they're probably going to be a playoff team. I just think that Cincinnati Bengals offense is just going to be – I just think you look what they did last year. Last year was Jamar Chase's first year in the NFL, as shocking as that is. It feels like he's been in there forever. Joe Burrow's first full season? Yeah, right? He tore his ACL, and then his first full season he made the Super Bowl. I think we're going to see this team a lot more experience. They added to that O-line. Joe Mixon's going to be good. Their wide receivers, obviously, everyone knows them. The defense should be similar to last year. I don't think it's going to be much, different. I don't think it'll be better. I don't think it'll be worse per se. I think it's probably going to be pretty average like it was last year. I mean, their D-line is pretty good. Trey Hendrickson is one of the more underrated players in the game right now. So I just think the Bengals offensively have and they own the Ravens too. It very well may come down to head-to-head. And we saw what they did last year. Obviously, the Ravens were extremely banged up. So take that how you will. But I just think there's something about the Bengals. I think that I agree with you. I wouldn't say that they're the AFC favorites. I wouldn't say that they're going to repeat as AFC champions. I just think that right now I would take them over the Ravens in this division. Obviously, the rest of the division we've kind of talked about, though. Browns, obviously, they're just kind of in a tough spot. They'll probably be around 500, 7, 8, 9 wins, something like that. Probably not good enough to make the playoffs in the AFC. And then the Steelers could be a very good team. I mean, the thing about the Steelers that I think I find so fascinating is how we're talking about this team like they're so bad, they're terrible. This team
I,
made the playoffs last year with Ben Roethlisberger, who was by far
yeah,
the worst quarterback in the NFL. Like anyone, Mitchell Trubisky, Mason Rudolph, like any of these guys are probably still better than Big Ben, how he was playing at the end of the year. So I think it's very interesting how people keep writing off the Steelers, including myself. I just think I don't know how they pulled that off last year and made the playoffs, but we'll see. I mean, I'm very curious to see how they play this year, but it is interesting because obviously they snuck in kind of somehow and got killed, but Big Ben was the QB. He was the corpse of Big Ben. It wasn't, it was a true corpse back there, and they managed to make the playoffs. So we'll see. I don't know what's going to happen with them, obviously, but Mike Tomlin, that guy is one of the best head coaches in the NFL, one of the best head coaches, arguably, of all time, potentially. I mean, that guy is
I mean, he doesn't miss
just
the
an
playoffs.
incredible coach. Yeah,
Oh, no,
it's just insane.
yeah,
Probably the
no,
second best head coach of this generation, him and
yeah,
Belichick, right? It's got
probably
to be.
Him or Andy, for sure.
Andy
Andy Reid,
Reid, too, yeah. That's the top three right there. Those are the
yeah,
goats.
for sure.
AFC South, this is a bad division.
Yeah,
What are your thoughts on this one?
yeah. I mean, I think I got the Colts winning this division. To be honest with you, I think Matt Ryan is such a massive, massive upgrade over Carson Wentz. I'm a huge Matt Ryan fan. I was actually kind of sad that he was wasting his final years in Atlanta because I think there's this big perception that this guy is like washed. He's a similar level to Carson Wentz from here. I still think, this guy is still, to me, a top 12, 14 quarterback in the league. Like, I think that this is a guy who can still really, really play. I think he still is really strong. Obviously, he was never a mobile quarterback, but Matt Ryan obviously ran that triple option at Boston College a little bit. He could run a little bit, but look, I think he's going to give the Colts a huge security blanket. I understand their receiving core isn't the best, but I really do. Matt Ryan is going to think he's in heaven with that Colts upgrade over the offensive line upgrade. Jalen Mayfield is no longer blocking for him, so I really do think he's going to have a lot of success in Indianapolis last year. And I mean, the Colts were a playoff team last year. They really were. They were on track to win
They
this
should have
division.
been in the playoffs.
Their quarterback choked massively the last two games. I mean, that's sort of what it came down to. He wasn't good enough. And I hate to pick on the I don't hate to pick on the guy. I love to pick on the guy, but there's a reason they went out and got Matt Ryan after 1 year, and ate some salary, and they didn't commit a small amount of money to Carson Wentz, and they still decided to get rid of him. So I mean, I just think I really like the Colts this year, and I'll have the Titans second in this division because I have to, but I'm really not too bullish on the Titans this year, and I'll explain why. I just don't think AJ Brown. I think was sort of the end. I understand Derrick Henry. I understand that he's one of the best running backs of all time. He's going to have a great season, I'm sure, again this year. But this is a guy who's coming off a serious injury, right? I mean, I'm sure he'll still be great. I'm sure he will still be great. But I just want to, I want to see how he can do it over a 16-game season again, if he can do it over a 16-game season again. And Robert Woods is really good. I'm sure Treylon Burks will be a solid receiver, but Bobby Trees is coming off an injury. I have no confidence in their offense. I really don't think it's going to be good at all. I just don't get trading away AJ Brown, and I understand I'm an Eagles fan, but this guy, he's a top. I think he's in that top 10ish range in the league for sure. And he's 24 years old. That was the wide receiver market. If you want an elite receiver, if they want an elite receiver in the future, guess what? If Treylon Burks develops and becomes the next AJ Brown, he's going to want to get paid too. I mean, those are my thoughts on that, and I'll go with the Texans. I'll go with the Texans third. I'll go with the Jags fourth and the third and the Texans fourth. Actually, And I actually like Davis Mills a lot, but I'm just going to back my boy Doug Peterson. But I think both of these teams are obviously going to be really bad this year. I am really interested to see how Derek Stingley Jr. plays, but if I had to, have a takeaway, and obviously going to be a huge year for Trevor Lawrence. And I mentioned it before, but I do think he's gonna thrive under Doug Peterson.
That Derek Stingley pick is just it's tough. Like I just don't get it personally. I think that you look at a team like the Houston Texans and what this team needs in turn, like where their franchise is at, and they're in a complete rebuild. Like they don't even know if they have the quarterback yet. You don't really have any young wide receivers per se. I mean, you got Brandon Cooks, sure, but outside of that, you know, you don't. Obviously, Dameon Pierce has lit up preseason. That I would have just personally gone with one of the tackles there. I don't really know why they didn't. It kind of perplexes. Who was their second pick in the first round? Was it like
Not
they
100%. I think
they traded back, right?
it took an offensive lineman.
I think it was like
forget.
Kenyon Green or something like
Yeah,
that.
it was.
I don't know. That third pick is going to be. It just reminds. Obviously, the Jets took Sauce Gardner fourth, but then the Jets are in a different spot in terms of their rebuild. I don't know. I have the same standings as you: Colts, Titans, Jags, Texans. I think the Colts are definitely by far the best team in this division. I'd be absolutely shocked if they don't win this. Matt Ryan, like you said, big upgrade. He's just better than Carson Wentz. I think this Colts team should have been in the playoffs last year, and they just that game against Jacksonville was just utter embarrassing. Um, Obviously, Jonathan Taylor, he's back. You just got to hope he doesn't get injured because that team will go as Jonathan Taylor goes. No matter how much of an upgrade Matt Ryan is, their receivers, they're solid. Michael Pittman's going to have a good year. If Jonathan Taylor is the engine of this team, and this team will go as far as he goes, essentially, is what I would say. Their defense also is so good. I think it's so underrated. Darius Leonard. I think Darius Leonard, to me, this guy to me is arguably like obviously Aaron Donald is the best defensive player in the NFL. Probably TJ Watt, maybe number two, but Darius Leonard to me is like top 3 or top 5. Like this guy is one of the most underrated still players in the NFL. He is just one of my favorite defensive players to watch. He is so good. The Colts, really underrated team. They bring in Stephon Gilmore. They should be really good. They should win this division. It would be honestly like Frank Reich. If this team is healthy and doesn't win the division, Frank Reich is on the hot seat. As good of a coach as I think he is.
Oh yeah,
definitely. Like he's going if they don't make the playoffs this year, assuming like Matt Ryan and Jonathan Taylor are not injured. Titans at 2, like you said, I'm not really big on this Titans team. They're just better than the other two teams. Their defense, we saw it last year in that Bengals game. That defense, they can provide some serious pressure on the quarterback. That was a pretty impressive defensive performance in that. I guess it was AFC divisional game, or wild card. Yeah, divisional game because they were the 1 seed somehow. That team was the 1 seed in the AFC last year. I'm not a big believer in Ryan Tannehill either. I think he is not good. Obviously, they gave him the extension because of what he's done. And look, he's led them to the playoffs. He's led them to playoff wins. So take it how it is. Obviously, it's not a good contract, but he's done a good job for them. And Derrick Henry is the key to this team if they have any hope of success. His status, his health. I expect him to be healthy. I mean, he did come back last year in the playoffs, and it's not like this was an injury that he was rehabbing throughout the whole offseason. Obviously, he was getting stronger and getting healthy, but he was back at the end of last year. So I think he'll be good to go. And, was his pace sustainable from last year that he was on? Can he do that this year? Probably not, but I'm curious to see how that goes. Jags at 3. I think they're just better than the Texans right now. I think that the Texans, they just don't really have anything. The Texans, like Davis Mills, yeah, he's solid. You got Brandon Cooks. Dameon Pierce looks good in preseason, but it's preseason. Like outside of that, though, defensively, there's just nothing there. Like this is a 2-3 win team, the Houston Texans. The Jags, they go out, they spend all this money. Trevor Lawrence, I think is not a make or break year, obviously for him, but a huge year in assessing his potential. I think if it's another disappointing year, you start talking about it. Maybe he doesn't have it. Maybe it's not him because he's got some guys. He's got Christian Kirk, who obviously did not deserve his payday. Happy he got it. Good for him. And is not a number 1 wide receiver, but he should be good. And I think the key for this Jags team is that duo at running back and seeing how they operate those guys. Travis Etienne coming back. That was Trevor Lawrence's guy in college. And I think you give him his guy, this offense ultimately, I know fantasy wise, Travis Etienne, James Robinson, it's interesting. People are very curious. If Trevor Lawrence ultimately just finds that finds that connection again with Etienne, and these guys are just moving, Travis Etienne is going to be the starter, even as good of a player as James Robinson is, because they got to make Trevor Lawrence as comfortable as possible. And if that's the way Travis Etienne's going to start, James Robinson should have a role. James Robinson is a very good player, obviously coming off the torn Achilles, though. So you got to be wary there. But I think this Jags team, they should be better. I think they can push for 5, 6 wins, maybe. That might be a stretch, but very curious to see Trayvon Walker, too. So I'm not going to spend any more time talking about this bad division, but yeah, that's my thoughts on that. Yeah, and we'll move on to the AFC West, the most interesting division in football. This is what a division this is going to be, Rob. What are your thoughts on the? Give me your 1 through 4. It's hard to really rank these 4 teams.
I'm gonna have a huge surprise at number one, and I've always backed them, except for one moment of doubt last year. So that should give you a
Oh,
hint.
okay. Yeah, I know who it is.
I'm gonna go with the Kansas City Chiefs here, and this is fueled by my belief that they have the best player in the sport. I mean, outside Aaron Donald, I think that's key sort of in his Aaron Donald tier. If you were doing a tier ranking, it would be Aaron Donald. I think they have the best quarterback in the sport, best quarterback in the AFC for sure, and I think they have the best coach in the division. I think their coach QB combo. And listen, I know Tyreek is amazing. I get it, but they still have Travis Kelce there. I think you can laugh at me all you want. I think Juju is going to have a huge year out there. I'm very interested to see how Mecole Hardman contributes, and I just don't see anybody dethroning the Chiefs. I just don't see anybody in this division beating. At the end of the day, the Chiefs have won this division for like 7 years in a row.
Yeah.
I understand the Chargers are much better. The Broncos have Russell Wilson. The Raiders are a lot better, but I especially don't see the Broncos or the Raiders challenging the Chiefs. And that sort of brings me to my number 2 spot here. I'm going to go with the Chargers. I think the Chargers and the Chiefs are 2 of the top 3 teams in the AFC. Obviously, I'd have the Bills probably at number 1 as of right now. But I think that the Chargers. They paid Derwin James. They brought a ton of guys in, including J.C. Jackson, which should be absolutely deadly for their defense. I mean, this is going to be a great team. I'm a huge Justin Herbert fan. Their offensive line finally solidified. They have a great receiving core, really good running back. This is a team that really has very few weaknesses. But like I said, the Chiefs have Patrick Mahomes, so I'm going to have the Chargers in second for now. Third, I am going to have the Raiders here. That Raiders offense, and I think the player that tends to go most overlooked, and maybe he's not overlooked anymore because this has even become a little cliche for him, is Hunter Renfrow. Is just, to me, that guy is not only a secret, but he's a monster. Like he destroys you. He's not, like a sort of a secret gadget. Like this is a guy who could take over a game.
Mm-hmm.
Darren Waller, Devontae Adams, Hunter Renfrow. I think that these offenses are just absolutely freaking ridiculous. They really are. And Derek Carr, to me, he's not on the level of these other 3 quarterbacks for me, but I still think that this guy is a really good quarterback. I think I like the Raiders a lot coming into this year. And then last, I have the Broncos, and I don't think the Broncos are a bad team by any means, but you sort of casted doubt about them in the past. How is Russell Wilson going to fit in? Is he going to improve his play a little bit? How's that offense going to look around them? How are the wide receivers going to be? Look, they obviously have a solid, solid defense out there. Justin Simmons, obviously, other guys, but I just kind of think, I think they are the worst team in this division. And obviously, if Russell Wilson plays like weeks 1 through 5, Russell Wilson the whole year, then they have a different shot. He sort of tails off. He sort of had a habit of tailing off at the end of the past few years. But I still think, all 4 teams in this division are very strong. And, I might pick the Broncos team and finish first in the AFC South, but I kind of just think that the Chiefs are Patrick Mahomes. That's kind of my justification for putting them first.
I'm in agreement with the last 2. I am going to say the Chargers win this division, though. I think it's going to be very close. I agree. I think that the Chiefs, I think people have overrated their downfall or overreacted to their downfall. This team's still going to be very good. Their defense got better. They got, Trent McDuffie, George Karlaftis in the first round. Those picks are going to help. Obviously, you do lose the Honey Badger. You bring in Justin Reed, though. who I think is going to be a very good fit there. So this Chiefs defense, it's going to be good. The O-line is fantastic. You got Pat Mahomes, you got Travis Kelce, and just offensively, it's just such a tough. This team is just so good scheme-wise, and they are just so good at making you miss and not know what's coming. And sure, Tyreek Hill, he's an incredible player. No one's doubting that, but they're going to be okay without him. Like you said, Juju, you have Marquez Valdez-Scantling there too, Nicole Hardman, Sky Moore. We're going to see it's not going to be a just two guys. Like they are going to be rotating all these guys and using every
sure.
single guy in a different way, and it's going to be fun to watch. I am picking the Chargers first, though. I think the Chargers are a team that these last few years have they just have not been able to get over that hump and get in the playoffs. I think this is the year that it's different. Offensively, that O-line just keeps getting better. Rashawn Slater is one of the best young tackles in the league. Corey Linsley, arguably the best center in the NFL. They draft, I believe, Zion Johnson. I always mess up who they draft, whatever guard it is. I'm almost 100% confident now that it was Zion Johnson. So that O-line should be good. Obviously, you got Keenan on. You bring back Mike Williams. Eckler, he's going to be amazing again. And I think the key is just that defense. That defense last year was what gave them trouble, that kind of held them back. You add J.C. Jackson, you add Khalil Mack, you add Sebastian Joseph Day. They just added so much to this defense that it's kind of unreal. And I think this team is going to be really scary. I think they're going to be really good. I think Brandon Staley's now going to be in his second year as a head coach. He did pretty good last year. He had some moments, obviously, that were not so good, but I think this team is just talent-wise, as good as the Chiefs are, as much as I like Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, Travis Kelce, the talent of the Chargers, I just think is just going to be too much. I think they're going to win the division. Number two, though, the Chiefs. I think that this team is still going to be so good. I would even say that in the playoffs, I would probably take the Chiefs over the Chargers and part of the reason is the Chiefs also are going to have that first place schedule, which, say about what you want, but the Chargers will have a little easier path, which can make a difference when it's going to be separated so closely. But the Chiefs, I mean, this is just as good as a team as ever. I was shocked when they lost last year to the Bengals. I thought this team was going to roll into the Super Bowl, run away with it. I just thought they were too good, and it's pretty shocking to watch Patrick Mahomes lose in the playoffs. This team's going to be good. Patrick Mahomes, he just doesn't lose.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like this guy is a freak.
Yeah, he's just, and Andy Reid. It's just this team is just too good. Travis Kelce's there. Obviously, Travis Kelce is 33 now, though, so there is going to be a point in which, and I'm not saying it's this year per se, but Travis Kelce eventually is going to start, downgrading in performance. So when that comes, it'll be very interesting. I'm not saying it's this year per se, but in the next 2 years or so, I don't think Travis Kelce is going to be, I think, it's safe to say he might be past his prime, but who knows? I think the Chiefs are still going to be good. Number three, I got the Raiders. I mean, this shouldn't surprise anyone who's watched any episode where we've talked about the AFC West. I'm not a big believer in the Broncos. I think they're a good team, but I just really have trouble predicting this team to go any higher than last in this division, just because offensively, compare the Raiders and the Denver Broncos. You have quarterback, sure, Russell Wilson definitely has the edge, but wide receiver, the Raiders have Devontae Adams, who is the best wide receiver in the NFL, Hunter Renfrow, who had an incredible season last year, and then at tight end you have Darren Waller, who is obviously was banged up last year, but 2 years ago had an incredible season, is one of the best tight ends in the National Football League. You got Josh Jacobs at running back, who's a great player. O-line is, not the best, but neither of these teams really have good O-lines. Denver Broncos offensively, like Cortland Sutton, he's had his good moments, no doubt. Jerry Jeudy, people are acting like Jerry Jeudy has gone out and put up Jamar Chase numbers sometimes. Like Jerry Jeudy, I always say this, I'm not saying he's a bad player. It's not even fair to him because he hasn't had a chance really to show what he's made of in these terrible schemes with these terrible quarterbacks. But until I see anything, I can't act like this guy is anything better than an average wide receiver in the NFL because that's what he's looked like in the NFL. And his performance has been average, if that. Average might be generous for how he's done. So, and I think he's going to be much better this year, 100%. I think this team is going to be a lot better offensively. But compared to like Devontae Adams and Hunter Renfrow, who are guys who are one of them's the best in the NFL and the other is like a Pro Bowl level player, I just got to see it from these guys before I predict this team any higher. Defensively, they should be good, but I don't think their defense is anything that's so special that puts this team, at a serious advantage compared to any of these teams. So I got to put Denver last. Raiders. I do like the Raiders, man. This team, they were a playoff team last year. They almost beat the Bengals, and they got a lot better. They got Devontae Adams, obviously, bring in Chandler Jones too. That's going to be good for the defensive side. Him and Max Crosby. I mean, that's going to be a fun D line. It's going to be a tough D line for opposing teams. So I'm excited to watch. This division obviously is the best division. This is probably the most, I would say, how has a division ever been more exciting, like all time, going into the season than this? I mean, it's truly incredible. It's going to be fun to watch, but yeah, I got Chargers, Chiefs, Raiders, Broncos. I'm not going to ramble on anymore. All right, moving on to the NFC least, as it's known by. Rob, I mean, we know who you're going to pick to win this division, but how do you have the rest of it shaken out?
I'm going to go with the Eagles, Cowboys, the Washington football team, and then the Giants. I was always going to pick the Eagles to win the division, but Tyron Smith obviously being out till potentially December. I mean, that's a huge blow for them. He's one of their most important players, arguably their best player. Maybe behind Micah Parsons at this point, which is kind of crazy to say considering Micah Parsons is about to enter his second
year.
Guy's
a freak, dude. He's a freak.
Freaking a freak. He's a freak. He's a monster. He's going to be the best defensive player in the NFL one day. Absolutely, that dude is a freak. But I've talked about the Eagles several times. I think they're very strong. Obviously, a lot's going to depend on the play of Jalen Hurts. But if he's the same as last year, I think the Eagles can minimally win 10 games because they won 9 games last year. They have almost an easier schedule this year, and obviously they added AJ Brown, Hassan Reddick, they just added a lot of pieces. They're very strong in the trenches, the Eagles, and when you're in maybe a weaker division, that's sort of where things get exposed. It's maybe easier to take advantage of, I should say. In the 6 other divisional games. But I just think, I don't know. Obviously a lot of bias here, but AJ Brown just has me so excited, man. I think that the team's potential is unlimited with him there. I mean, they do really have an easy schedule. I'd be really disappointed if they really didn't win 11, even 12 games this year. I think they're more than capable of it. They've got veterans, up front. They've got a really solid defensive backfield. Obviously, the safety position is a little bit of a question mark, but Marcus Epps is getting reps back there. I wonder if they'll try to bring in another veteran safety. Obviously, doesn't look like Tart may not make the team, but I think the Cowboys will be good. I think they're very banged up. I think they've lost a lot of pieces. Obviously, we've talked about it before, but Michael Gallup being hurt really just is not good because Cedric Wilson is obviously no longer in Dallas. I mean, CeeDee Lamb is going to have a monster year this year, and I actually think he probably will have a monster year this year. But I don't know. I just think that the Eagles right now are probably the better team with Tyron Smith out, for most of the season because if you look at as great as he is, and he'll walk into the Hall of Fame, Tyron Smith, obviously. But this is a guy who's a pretty injury-prone player over the course of his career. And, their records, I'll just call them on-off splits, basically. The Cowboys' record without him is not pretty historically. So I think it's, sort of fueling a lot of my predictions here. And then I just think the Giants are a freaking trash dumpster fire organization. Brian Dable, Joe, they're bringing in a new culture. I don't really care. They suck. They're a shitty organization. They have Daniel Jones playing quarterback. I don't really obviously Kayvon Thibodeau's, he avoided a serious injury, but he'll be out for the first couple weeks of the season. Or, I don't think he'll play week 1, but he may play week 1. But also have Washington because I do think I will give Carson Wentz one compliment, and that's that I do think he's significantly better than Daniel Jones.
Yeah. I mean, I have the same standings. I think that Eagles, I think, are the best team in this division. I think they added a lot. They had a really good draft. Jalen Hurts, obviously, the one question mark, but I think Jalen Hurts is going to have a good season. I mean, I don't think he's a bad quarterback by any stretch of the imagination. Is he good enough to win a Super Bowl? I think is the question you have to start asking, and probably not. I think, though, he is very good enough to win, 11, 12 games, like you said, in the regular season. I don't think it's, I just think with the Cowboys right now, like you said, Tyron Smith, but even before him, they just lost so much this offseason. They lost pieces just all over the place. You lose Amari Cooper. Cedric Wilson, like you said. You lose Lyle Collins. You lose some other guys on the defensive side of the ball. Randy Gregory, for example. It's just a different team, and they haven't done anything with what they had last year. And who's to say that this year's going to be any different, really? With whatever, they just didn't do anything. It's just not. They're not good enough. And you hear Jerry Jones saying that we'll go as Zeke goes. Zeke is the engine of this offense. I actually think that's a good point. I think this team's going to have to run the ball, and I think if Zeke is healthy and Zeke is performing, maybe this is a different conversation. But Zeke has been banged up. Obviously, he's older at this point. So, but I agree. I think that the key for the Dallas offense is absolutely Ezekiel Elliott, because if he's not performing and their run game isn't there, this team is screwed. Because passing wise, obviously Dak is great, CD is good, a very good receiver. They just don't have enough otherwise. So Zeke, I agree in what Jerry Jones is saying, that Zeke is the key for the Cowboys. I think they'll be the 2 seed. I don't know if they'll make the playoffs. Maybe, I guess the NFC is so weak that they might sneak in. Washington at 3. I think Washington, Dallas is actually. I think that gap will be closer than the gap between Dallas and Philly. I think Washington offensively, Antonio Gibson is returning kicks now, which is pretty interesting. But Carson Wentz should do a good job with Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson. The defensive side of the ball, I think, will be pretty good. I think Washington, I think they're just like an average team. Like I've kind of said, like 7, 8, 9 wins. Like you have a few of these teams in the NFL that are just average, and that's fine. Like they're just not good enough. And the Giants are just terrible. Like Daniel Jones, we've seen it. The only thing about the Giants, they had a good first round last year. It's a good start. I'm very interested to see how Saquon does this year. Saquon fully healthy. Can he be this explosive player? He looks good. Yeah, I mean, I'm very interested. I think he could be if Saquon gets back to form, I'm not saying it's going to change the Giants, but it'd just be fun to watch. At least the Giants would have something on that offense. Obviously, Daniel Jones, though.
Kenny got the contract. That was.
Yeah, that was bad. They've just obviously it's a new GM, new coach. So the Dave Gettleman era. Dave Gettleman is just unfortunately his mark is still all over that team, and that's the problem. They just at this point, Joe Schoen has kind of come in and he's kind of just having to. I mean, they're just this year is essentially just they just have to eat this year, knowing that there's like nothing they can do. They couldn't sign anyone. They just have to watch a terrible team and basically just move on next offseason. It's pretty crazy. Like they just, they don't really have many pieces for the future too. I mean, obviously this draft, Kadarius Toney looks good. He was injured, obviously, but there's just not much to be excited about right now if you're a Giants fan. Just the truth of it. NFC North, next division. Honestly, this division is, I mean, obviously we'll both have the Packers at 1, but how do you have the rest of it shaking out? It's the Vikings obviously will be at 2 as well. So I guess my question is, what does the bottom half look like?
I'm going to go with the Packers, Vikings, Lions, and then the Bears here. I think the Bears are the worst team in football, to be perfectly honest with you. I really don't like to judge a GM off their first offseason because I'll probably end up looking. You there, Griff?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, sorry, it was just a little frozen for me. Obviously, I don't like to judge a GM off their first offseason, I was saying, but I think Ryan Poles has just done an absolutely terrible job so far. Obviously, their best player wants to leave. And then, I mean, they were going to win 3 games with him on the team. I wonder how many they're going to win without him now.
Well, he's playing, he said.
Yeah, he did. But I just, like, this is a disaster. And I really feel, I know you do too as an Ohio State fan. I don't know if you're an Ohio State fan. I don't know how much allegiance you have out there anymore.
Still support them if Northwestern's out of it.
I know. Yeah, I mean, I feel bad for Justin Fields. I really do. I mean, he doesn't have anybody to throw the ball to. He has no protection up front. Their defense is sketchy at best. At best, they have some good players, but at best, that defense is sketchy. They're the worst team in football to me. And obviously, I don't think the Lions will be very good, but I'll just be real. I'm a big Dan Campbell fan. I think he can inspire them to more than whatever the Chicago Bears. That's kind of basically what's driving that. And in terms of the Packers, not much more needs to be said about them than what people don't already know. They have an elite quarterback, arguably a top two, the best quarterback in football, undoubtedly a top two quarterback in football, and that'll be enough. Obviously, you can never predict Aaron Rodgers or what he's going to say or do next these days. But these are the last couple years. I mean, the LaFleur Rodgers connection works. It's just that they haven't been able to get it done in the postseason. I mean, they've been dominant in the regular season. He's won 13 games 3 times every season. I mean, this is a dominant regular season team. They've been the best regular season team in football. It's just they can't get it done really when it matters. So I'll go with the Packers again here, despite losing today. I still think Aaron Rodgers will be just fine over there. And then the Vikings, who I actually think are going to be pretty good this year because I understand a lot of people aren't Kirk Cousins believer. I think Kirk Cousins is more than fine in the NFL, especially in the regular season. I really am interested because Justin Jefferson said that he was really excited about this new offense. Obviously, you said he said he could see why Cooper Kupp was open all the time, but I kind of think that Zimmer was getting stale out there. They have a new GM, a new coach. I kind of am excited about what hopefully this offense, because this offense has pieces. They have a good receiving core. Obviously, they have Dalvin Cook. This offense should not look as stagnant as it does 99% of the time. So I really am interested to see what the Vikings do this year.
Yeah, I have the same standings. I think you said it well. The Packers, they're just dominant in the regular season. Even though you lose Devontae Adams, you still got Aaron Jones, A.J. Dillon. I think they're going to have both big years. And, someone in that the receiving core, guys will get open. Like, it's kind of like the Chiefs. Like, they make guys who aren't as good as they are look a lot better than they are. So they should be good. And they have a really good defense, too, even though they lost some guys. They bring back Devondre Campbell, who was really good last year for them. So this team should still be very good. Vikings at 2. Vikings, like you said, I mean, this offense, they've got the pieces. Like, they have a lot of good pieces on offense. It should be a pretty good team. Justin Jefferson, I think, is in for a huge year. This guy, he's going to get a hell of a contract next offseason. It's going to be something if he chooses to stay in Minnesota. He is just unreal, and this team should be pretty good, like you said. The new Kevin O'Connell, I think he's gonna be a good head coach. You look at what he did in LA, and that team. You study the mind of Sean McVay, and you work right next to him. You're going to be in a good spot. I know you're not as big a Sean McVay guy per se, but he is a offensive mind at all.
I respect Sean
What?
McVay.
No, I know.
Think that the media, sorry to interrupt here, but I just have to defend myself. But listen, I respect Sean McVay a lot. I think he's one of the best I think he's the best offensive mind in the NFL, maybe after Andy Reid. And I think, that this guy's an elite head coach. He'll go into the Hall of Fame because he has all these accomplishments at age 36. But I just think that the media is a little excessive in their praise for him sometimes. I think a lot of it's like, oh, Sean McVay's memory, this, that. Like, just let the guy coach. I don't know. I like Sean McVay, though. I just want to.
But I think this Vikings team should be good. Their defense hopefully will be better. That's kind of been their Achilles heel, I would say. They just have not had a good defense really, but hopefully it'll be better. I agree though, and with the rest of this division, Lions at 3. Dan Campbell, like you said, he's a really good spiritual leader in terms of actual head coach. He's got some work to do, but he is he motivates people, like I've never seen before, and I think he's a great guy and how could you not want this guy leading your football team? I mean, he wants to win more than anyone, and you see that in his players and in the Lions, and he's made the Lions actually a fun team to go out and watch, even with Jared Goff at quarterback, as crazy as that is. And they've got some good young pieces. They got Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jamison Williams will be back at some point this year. DeAndre Swift's a heck of a player, and defensively, obviously Aiden Hutchinson's coming in. Jeff Okudah is a very big wild card because at this point you would say that he's probably a bust and he's not going to amount to anything. But Jeff Okudah, he hasn't had a full season. Maybe he plays a full season. Maybe he looks great. He could be a huge potential young piece for them. Who knows? I'm not expecting. To be honest, if I had to say, I'd say I do like Jeff Okudah a lot. I just don't know if it's there for him. I just don't know at this point if you can say with all the injuries. But if this guy can show what he did in college in the NFL. That's a piece people forget about. So I'm excited to watch the Lions. I think this team should be better than last year. maybe like 4 wins, 5 wins, if that. I don't know. Five's a little generous, probably. But and then, like you said, the Chicago Bears last. You got to feel for Justin Fields. What were you gonna say?
Okuda's had a pretty good camp so far as well.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
with Jeff Okuda, but yeah, the Chicago Bears, like, you got to feel for Justin Fields, like you said, like this guy kind of already got screwed over in the draft a little bit. Like people didn't really like him, and maybe not screwed over, I should say, but he fell.
Over is a good one.
I guess screwed over. I don't know. I felt like he should have gone higher. He was a really good player in college, and now you just look at the situation last year with Matt Nagy, just an absolute disaster. And then this year, I mean, there's just we're talking about Darnell Mooney, like he's just, and this guy who's going to just, I mean, he's a fine player, but come on now, Darnell Mooney. I mean, and there's no one else. I mean, David Montgomery, sure, he's fine, but you got to feel for Justin Fields. And it's just one of those situations. It reminds me a little bit of Sam Darnold, maybe, but I do believe Justin Fields is better than Sam Darnold, but just a situation where the kid just got put in a terrible situation right off the bat, and it just seems like it's just going to be a bad situation for the rest of the 4 years or whatever. And you just got to feel for the guy. I mean, he's probably going to have a bad year because just how. I mean, he had a great preseason game yesterday. I guess you can look at that, and he's shown the flashes. It's just they're bad. The Bears are bad. Their defense is bad. This team is going to be bad. I would say they're maybe second worst. I think the Falcons are probably the worst team in the NFL, in my opinion. But yeah, this team's going to be bad. It's not much more to say. I'm not going to waste my time talking about the Bears. You just got to feel for Justin Fields though, a little bit. Sure. NFC South. This division is it's actually pretty interesting, I would say. I mean, obviously you got the Bucks, who I think both of us will agree are going to win the division, but the Saints the Saints might have a really good offense this year. The Panthers, you got Baker Mayfield. The Falcons, like I said just before, are terrible, but they've got some young guys on that offense. How do you see this division finishing?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I have the Bucks at 1. I don't really think there's anything. I don't know.
We don't have to. It's not even like more like Tom Brady. This team's going to be good. Yeah. Chris Godwin's coming back. Like they got the O-line's the only issue.
And then, like you said, obviously the Saints were 5-2 before Jameis got hurt last year. I'm not really sure why they didn't try to go out and replace him, because they would have probably pretty easily made the playoffs over a team like the Eagles if they had just not stuck with Taysom Hill. So I don't really know why they did that. But obviously, I guess they didn't want to give up any draft capital or anything like that for a midseason upgrade. But I honestly think that they'll probably be pretty solid this year. Like you said, I think one of those teams that could probably win 8, 9, 10 games, but I don't think there'll be anything special. Obviously, I think Jameis will be good. They lost Sean Payton, but it's still going to be basically Sean Payton's team. I don't really think there's going to be too much turnover there. But yeah, I mean, I think a lot of this hinges on how healthy is Michael Thomas actually, because he was healthy.
Hurt.
I don't know if this guy is going to be able to stay healthy at all. They'll be good. They have a great defense. Jameis will be fine. Michael Thomas will be back. Like I said, I think they'll probably look very similar to how they looked before Jameis went down with the torn ACL last year. They were pretty good. But I'll have the Panthers at 3 here. With Sam Darnold starting, I would have had them last, because Sam Darnold is not an NFL level quarterback. I really know how he's still in the league, but obviously I think Baker Mayfield will definitely be way better than last year. He's playing in a low pressure environment. He's obviously way healthier. He's got
there's pressure on him though. There's a lot of pressure on him personally.
Fair enough. Personally, there's a lot of pressure, but I guess Cleveland was in a lot, but basically what I'm saying is Carolina is not exactly in a must-win situation.
Cleveland had, once they made that Odell trade, Cleveland had probably some of the most hype and pressure out of any NFL team in the last 5 years. Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, I'm expecting him to play way better this year. Is the point? The way that I can put this best, I guess, is just that the Panthers have more NFL level players than the Falcons, and neither of them even have that many, to be honest. But obviously, J.C. Horn for the Panthers, I'm very interested to see how he plays this year. Obviously, got hurt, midway through his rookie year, so we'll see how he plays. I'm just very, and then the Falcons. I just want them to play Desmond Ridder. To be honest, we know what Marcus Mariota is. Look, just throw Kyle Pitts the ball. I am in fantasy. That's all I ask. Just throw him the ball. But I think Kyle Pitts is basically what I can say about the Falcons is Kyle Pitts will be a total fucking monster this year. I can say that's the only positive I can give them. And AJ Terrell is one of the best cornerbacks in the NFL. So those are the two positives I can give the Atlanta Falcons.
Who was the Falcons' first round pick this year?
It was a receiver. It was Drake London.
Oh, right, Drake London. Yeah. Yeah, I have the same order: Bucks, Saints, Panthers, Falcons. Bucks, like we said, like this team is going to be good, really good again. The O line is the only concern for now, but they'll be okay. Saints, Jameis, like you said, this team is pretty good with him. And that receiving core is a huge upgrade over last year. Michael Thomas obviously is a little banged up. I don't know what his week one status is as of now, but regardless, you have Chris Olave and Jarvis Landry there. That's huge upgrades compared to last year. Alvin Kamara doesn't look like he'll be suspended either this year. So, it seems like he'll be there. And that defense, like you said, really good. Panthers at 3. The Panthers are a very interesting team because defensively, they do have some pieces. They got Brian Burns, JC Horn, like you said. Like they've got some of these guys that are, potentially really good. Offensively, it depends on Christian McCaffrey. Like even the quarterback play in Carolina these last few years, though, has been probably some of the worst I've ever seen. Like they've just not had even. They had 1 week of Cam Newton where everyone thought this guy was the second coming of they thought it was MVP Cam again. I'm done hearing about Cam Newton. You hear even they asked Matt Rule, hey, are you going to bring back Cam after Darnold's hurt? I'm like, just can't. Like Cam is done. He's what? I don't understand. Like they're even talking. They're living in that Super Bowl season still where they lost in the Super Bowl. And Cam Newton, they just still think is on that level. I cannot hear about Cam Newton anymore. He is so bad. I cannot like this guy was terrible last year. He was as bad as any quarterback except for that Cardinals game where
except for Sam Darnold. No, I'm kidding.
It doesn't. But both of them suck. It's like Sam Darnold obviously sucks, but like, why are we talking about Cam Newton still? Like this guy is just
this Cam Newton really guy you got.
No, I've just heard so much. I mean, yeah, I've had personal things where I've heard a lot about Cam Newton, and it's just like I've been saying for 4 years now that this guy is not good enough to be in the league. And then I see something pop up on Bleacher Report the other day, like a notification, and it's like, or a tweet or something. They're asking about Matt Rule about Cam Newton, and I'm like, what did they not watch the tape last year? Like this guy was atrocious. Like you start Cam Newton, you're winning like 3 games the whole season. I mean, Bill Belichick couldn't even, Cam Newton got like beat out by Mac Jones, man. Like, oh my God.
Cam, I respect Cam obviously because he was
obviously, yeah. It's just at this point in his career, he's just washed.
He's too injured. I mean, he got really banged up in his prime, unfortunately. So he never really was.
Cam Newton in his prime was a freak of nature, and had one of the best quarterbacks out there in this generation in his prime. Yeah, he's just so far from his prime at this point, and that's just what I don't want to act like a Cam Newton. Like this guy, when he was good, he was, top 3 in the league. Like this guy was nuts. Well deserving of what he went number 1, right? Number 1 overall. Like well deserving of that spot. It's just at this point, like
the craziest.
I think Panthers fans just need to move on from. I know they'll always love Cam Newton. I understand why. They just need to move on. He's just not going to help you win football games at this point.
A crazy fact: Cam Newton won a national championship with 2 other future NFL players on his team. 2. That's crazy. He took it and went 6-6, transferred to Auburn, and then won the national championship the next year.
Like, who were the 2 players? Were they relevant players?
Nobody you would like. No, a national championship will usually have like. Yeah.
All right, no more rambling of Cam Newton here. We'll jump to the NFC West here. Obviously, a very interesting division. The defending Super Bowl champion, Los Angeles Rams. Rob, your predictions for this division? I would assume the Rams are at 1, but maybe I'm wrong here.
Yeah, I have the Rams at 1 here. I'm obviously a little scared of Matthew Stafford's tendonitis that the Rams seem to be downplaying a lot. I'm not sure how much you can downplay tendonitis, but it's all right. I still am going to have them at 1 though, because if Matthew Stafford is healthy, they'll roll this division again. This is a great football team. Their defense is unbelievable. The offense is great. I don't really know what else to say besides that. At 2, I am going to have the 49ers here. Look, I think, like you said, just having Kyle Shanahan there is just going to be, it's going to be so helpful for Trey Lance, I think. Obviously, you got to sit a year last year, learn, take things in, having a strong camp. I think all signs, like this 49ers team should have made the Super Bowl last year. They choked hard. This is a great freaking football team. This defense is unreal. Like, I think that the Rams and the 49ers are probably, to me, 2 of the 4 best teams in the NFC. I think that the 49ers, obviously, I don't think that Trey Lance will be worse than Jimmy G was last year, which is kind of what I'm basing this off of. And I think he'll probably even be better. And if he is, I think that the ceiling for the 49ers is quite high. At 3 here, I'm going to have the Cardinals. You know me, I really don't think Cliff Kingsbury is it at all. They'll be good. They're just not as good as the other 2 teams in this division. And I think they'll sort of be in a scrap for one of the last couple of playoff spots, to be honest with you. Obviously DeAndre is missing the 6 games this year. I'm not crazy.
6 games.
Am I?
Yeah, 6 games, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, no DeAndre Hopkins for 6 games. That'll be really tough for them. So I'm going to pick them to finish 3rd in this division. And then obviously, the Seahawks are having the Seahawks just named Geno Smith their starter, which is basically, I can leave my analysis at that pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah, so we are going to have officially predicted the entire NFC the same. I have Rams, 49ers, Cardinals, Seahawks. Rams they're just a good, this Rams team is so good. They have so much talent. Obviously, that offense, you bring in Allen Robinson. I feel like an Odell reunion still feels inevitable at times, but yeah, I really like the Rams. I think that this team is good. Their defense, obviously, you got Ramsey, Donald. They bring in Bobby Wagner. That could be interesting. That could be fun. We'll see what happens there. 49ers at 2, like you said. This is the 2-3, I think, is where it gets interesting. San Francisco, there's just so much talent. Like Deebo Samuel, obviously, we saw what he did last year. I think he's going to have another huge year. Trent Williams is the best offensive lineman in the NFL. And then that defense, you got Nick Bosa, you got Fred Warner. There's just so many guys, and they just do such a good job there. And Trey Lance obviously is the key. Like if Trey Lance, they traded all that capital for Trey Lance. They've invested everything into Trey Lance. So Trey Lance, there is a lot of pressure on him to be the guy because they need him to produce like it. And I think he's going to be good. I think I think there's a lot of things about him that are very interesting. I'm very curious to watch how he plays this year, though. And I think Kyle Shanahan, you couldn't have a better situation than this. Like you look at Justin Fields and you're like, you could have a worse situation. Trey Lance couldn't have a better situation. Yeah. You're working with Kyle Shanahan. You've got Deebo Samuel, a good O-line. This is Trey Lance set up to have success. So I'm excited about that. Cardinals at 3, they're just it's just, we saw what they did in the playoffs last year. Like this team is not, they're not good enough to win a championship. They maybe they'll sneak into the playoffs, but I don't know. Kyler Murray, he's a good quarterback, no doubt. Some of these weapons, you bring in Hollywood Brown, Rondell Moore. I guess they're going for kind of a speedy type offense. It's gonna be interesting to see how that works. Defensively, you got JJ Watt, who will probably have 20 injuries he's playing through by week 7, unfortunately, but or week 3, I should say, not week 7. JJ Watt's a great player. They lose Chandler Jones. Isaiah Simmons, I think, is the key. Like this guy he's another one of those rookies that are not rookies, but young guys who just has not lived up to the hype. And this kid at Clemson was just so unreal. And if they can tap into that, in Arizona, it could be huge. So I'm excited to watch. Who's their first round pick? They picked a corner, right? Or am I wrong?
No, you're right. They picked. Hold on, I'll know. Did they pick Andrew Booth? Is that who they picked? I could be wrong.
Picked Andrew Booth. I feel like they did. I feel like Andrew Booth went second round to the Vikings. I'm trying because
Right.
we did so many mock drafts that
I clouded our.
yeah, like I forget who. Oh, they didn't. They traded their pick for Hollywood Brown. My bad.
Right, right. They did. They traded 23 for Hollywood, right? I do remember that. Yeah.
Never mind. So forget what I was thinking about that. And then lastly, the Seattle Seahawks, like you said, they're going to be bad. And you hear Pete Carroll say they have 2 number ones at quarterback, though. So maybe this team will make a run. They got some real good players back there at the quarterback position. But yeah, this team they're screwed. I mean, this team they've got nothing. I mean, they have nothing young talent wise. It's actually incredible. I mean, who they picked? Was it Charles Cross, their first round pick, right? Charles Cross, I believe. I think it's lagging, but Charles Cross was their first rounder. I don't know. I'm talking to myself, I guess, right now.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. What?
yeah,
Yeah. 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 Now, hear me? Can you hear me, Griff?
I can hear you.
All
Yeah,
right.
Charles Cross. Yeah. So hopefully he pans out and looks good. But yeah, not much to be excited about. But that will do it for our standings predictions. I mean, I know there was five divisions we predicted the same. So I mean, it's tough to predict all these differently, but we've got some differences in there. It should be fun. Should be a fun year in the NFL. We'll maybe check back on those as the year goes on, and as those come to conclusion. I do want to pivot though to some NBA news. Obviously, that's happened in the last few weeks. Kevin Durant is going to be a Brooklyn Net. I'm not shocked. I don't think anyone's surprised by this. It never seemed like a trade was going to happen or come to fruition, but they committed to KD. So now you've got KD, Kyrie Irving, Ben Simmons. It's actually interesting because like the whole time, like if Kevin Durant and Kyrie both just agree to stay, like the Nets on paper should be a pretty darn good team. Like this team should be able to compete. Your thoughts on the whole situation? Obviously, there were thoughts that he might get traded, but it just never really seemed like anything was remotely even close to coming to reality.
Yeah. I I kind of just think it was interesting because, obviously a report came out that the last team to really try to bid were the Memphis Grizzlies. Funny enough, and they were unwilling to give up Desmond Bane and Jaren Jackson, which is just sort of emblematic of how all of this has gone. But yeah, I'm still in the camp where I understand KD is 34 years old. I understand he's not going to play every regular season game, but if you're a team that's close, come on, man. This is Kevin Durant we're talking about. And I get it. And I understand people think he's crazy, blah, blah, blah. But, like, if I'm a contending team that's close to winning a championship and I know my team isn't good enough, AKA, like, the Memphis Grizzlies, like, I love Desmond Bane, too. I really do. I think he's a really good player. But come on. You're telling me if you swap a sick – and I understand Ja didn't play a ton last year, but you're talking about swapping. You're talking about a Memphis Grizzlies team swapping Desmond Bane for Kevin Durant. I don't know. I just kind of think that's how it's gone. But, like, I'm not surprised he's staying in Brooklyn. It sucks it turned out that way, but it is kind of humiliating for him to say, yeah, I want the coach and GM fired. And then, like, turns out, yeah, you don't have enough power. I don't know. I think the whole thing just reflects poorly on KD because I think this is one of the first times recently, at least. I mean, there's so many guys that have been able to just force their way, around in professional sports. And like the craziest part is like, it's not that the Nets were unwilling to trade him. They just like the suitors weren't willing to give up enough. Like it's Kevin Durant we're talking about here. Like, yeah, you can be content winning 45, 50 games every year with your young guys and having a longer title window. But at the end of the day, you're still missing out on Kevin Durant. You know what I mean? Are you there?
I'm here. I know my Wi-Fi is kind of all over the place maybe right now, but yeah,
No,
I think
probably
that
a combination for Wi-Fi's, to be honest.
yeah. No, but I heard what you said. I think that Kevin Durant, it's just like, yeah, like I think we just saw teams that
Yeah,
there's just teams that are just not willing to trade any young talent. And it's really weird. Like it's just teams clearly value their own pieces, their own young guys more than, KD. And I think KD, we've obviously seen some stars get traded. And, I guess the most similar situation would be Anthony Davis with the Lakers getting traded. And I mean, you do look at what that took. It took Brandon Ingram, who was the third overall pick, Lonzo Ball, second overall pick. They traded like the 4th overall pick too. I mean, they traded a ton for Anthony Davis. So you look at teams, and it just seems like teams weren't willing to do that for Kevin Durant. And Anthony Davis, he was, 25, 26 maybe when he got traded, something like that. I don't know, around then. He was still in his young, prime potentially, I guess you were buying into. And KD is 34.
Yeah.
He's still one of the best he's top 3 player in the NBA. He is 34 though, and is he going to regress? No one knows, because you look at LeBron, what he's doing, and LeBron hasn't regressed one bit. So you could be looking at 4 years of prime KD, in which case teams are stupid. I thought, a team like Phoenix should have been way more aggressive. I think that, that team is not winning a championship.
That they weren't winning everything.
If you paired Chris Paul, Devin Booker, and Kevin Durant, I mean, that's as good as a shot. I mean, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
McCall Bridges and Cam Johnson, these guys are good players, but come on, like their current team is not winning a championship. Like it's, and now you've got the DeAndre Ayton contract, which is just going to eat salary. I mean, you're basically never going to be able to sign a free agent again with all those guys. It's tough, but I'm not surprised. I didn't think he would get traded, but and yeah, like you said, like the whole GM and coach thing being fired is kind of crazy, and that's going to obviously lead to some turmoil. And look, Steve Nash should be fired. Steve Nash is not a head coach. I don't understand how he's still the head coach of that team. We were saying this in the in the playoff time last year. Like, this guy is just not a head coach. Say what you want about his NBA career, he's not a head coach. And you see all the stuff on the internet about him doing the TikTok dances with the memes, and it's just like, oh my god, like a clown show in Brooklyn at this point. It's truly a clown show. It's crazy. I mean, when this team signed Kyrie and KD, how many ever years ago that was? It feels like 20,000 years ago at this point. But you look at where they're at now with it's just a circus, and who knows? I don't even know what to expect. I'm not expecting this team to win a championship. I think they could be pretty good. I think they got a lot of good pieces, but who knows? KD and it's always going to be attached to KD's legacy. The requesting a trade, going to Golden State. He'll always be remembered for that. And crazy. I don't know. It's crazy.
Going another tires, basically.
Yeah.
I'm just like, I just can't believe. I'm going to reiterate. Teams weren't willing to give up players like, and these are guys I really like. Like, I'm just like getting them out there. I'm not calling them bums by any means, because these are really good young players. Like, Desmond Bane is a future perennial all-star. But like, I just don't like. He averaged 22 points a game like in the second year. Like, this guy's a monster. But it's just like, this is Kevin Durant we're talking about.
No, yeah.
This is a guy who is going to push you over the top. Like, I don't know, man. It's just crazy to me that like people are valuing like, and the Sixers were doing it too. Apparently with Tyrese Maxey, it's just crazy. Like, it's just unreal. Like, these players are like, this is just Kevin Durant.
I think it's pretty interesting to see the difference in how teams operate in the NBA compared to the NFL. Like, the NFL, like, there is no hesitation when it comes to acquiring talent. Like, teams are like, you look at the teams that are doing good, like the Rams, like they'll trade every first round pick they can possibly trade for eternity to win. And like, you look at all these deals, and like, you hear like teams are just not willing, especially in the NBA, like first round picks in the NBA. I would trade like 10 first round picks to get like a superstar. Like, they just, unless you have like a top 5 pick, the picks really, you're getting like a journeyman almost. I get not wanting, like, I get with the Knicks and Donovan Mitchell, you hear like the Jazz one, the Knicks offers 5 firsts and like Obi Toppin. Like, yeah, that's a lot, obviously, and I don't think the Knicks should do that, because I don't think it puts them over the top by any means, and I think they would still be like a fringe playoff team at that. So definitely don't do that. But like, in terms of like Kevin Durant, like, yeah, like I would have traded like 10 first round picks for him. Like, it doesn't make a difference at that point, especially if you're going to be able to win a championship. Like the Knicks, I get it. Like, I would trade picks and I would do what it takes to get Donovan Mitchell, but it just doesn't put them over the edge. So, they shouldn't mortgage their entire future for a guy who, maybe they'd be like a 6 seed. Like, it's not a good move for them.
I agree. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I agree with I agree with everything you just said. And I mean, in terms of the Jazz, I talk about a franchise in total rebuild mode. Obviously, just traded acquired Martin Tucker, got Patrick Beverly and Russell Westbrook on the same team now, which should be fascinating because it seems like
that did happen. We can talk about that. That was
yeah. I mean,
the lake show, man. You gotta love it.
Be an interesting team to watch this year. If everybody,
they finally got rid of Taylor Horton Tucker.
If everybody stays healthy, they did. Generational prospect Taylor Horton Tucker. Yeah.
If they, like you said though, like the Lakers theoretically should be solid. I mean, obviously, you hear all this stuff about maybe they trade. They probably I don't even know at this point. Just run it back with Russ one more time and just eat the salary at the end of the year, like, and just get it going, like, and just see what happens. I think at this point, they won that championship. I know they wanted more, but they did win that one, and that will be, I guess.
They won one, and I understand it's blah, 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 blah. But in 10 years, no one's going to care where the hell they won it. It's only that LeBron.
I think the bubble championship was more the bubble championship.
Yeah, I don't
was actually one of the more. It was actually one of the more credible champion. Like the MLB you look at with that weird 60-game season, like the playoffs were a joke. Like, yeah, the Dodgers World Series that year, like, yeah, it's not fraudulent, but like it's a different level because you weren't playing in home park. Yeah. I mean, I guess no one was playing in home parks, but like the bubble was like that was a grind. That was a grind.
Yeah, no, and it was definitely more entertaining than the baseball playoffs that year. To be honest, too, let's be real. I mean, I think everybody was sort of tuned into the bubble because it was sort of the first organized sports action besides the we had seen it once.
No, MLB was a joke, bro. Like the MLB, every team in the playoffs except for our two teams, of course, they still couldn't even get the job done.
Exactly, dude. The Phillies had to go. So the Phillies had to go 2-6 in their last 8 games to make the playoffs that year, and they went 1-7 in their last 8. It's just
similar with the Mets. I mean, the Marlins made it more recently than us. The rebuilding Marlins. I mean, that will change this year, obviously, but good God.
Yeah.
I guess we'll pivot to MLB real quick to end this episode. I mean, we won't talk about it too long, but man, the NL East is just the Atlanta Braves never lose. I've generally never seen anything like it. Like when they lost last night, I was shocked. I mean, it's truly like a once in a lifetime experience when the Atlanta Braves lose. I mean, I'm worried about the Mets. I know they have an easy schedule, but I mean, all 3 of these NL East teams are really, really good teams.
Yeah, and the Mets just own the Phillies, unfortunately. That's just how it. It's just the Phillies are almost 30 games above 500 against teams not named the Mets, but it's just it's crazy, man. I've never seen one team own another Philly team as hard as the Mets are. But like you said, the NL East is just the cream of the crop in baseball right now. And it's just really. It's nice to see after being made fun of for so many years. Obviously, we did have an 87 win division winner last year. They won the World Series, to be fair, but they did win.
Yeah, we have 2 of the last 3 World Series winners somehow.
Yeah, dude, which is pretty crazy to think about. But but I like you said, the Braves are not losing a lot of baseball games at a certain point. They're just not. The Mets are unbelievably good, obviously. And look, I think I'm just excited to see what we can do with Bryce. I'll just say that. We have 2 more favorable series coming up against Arizona and San Francisco. Hopefully push that out to 25 games above 500, something like that. Hopefully we can get out there. It just sucks that we're probably going to have to end up playing either the Mets or the Braves. That's just how it's going to end up being. And because it'll just be the first wild card versus the second wild card. And I still think I have confidence in the Mets just because you've been talking about
you would probably play the 4 and the 5. Yeah, you're right.
Sure. Yeah, the 4 play each other. It just the NL East is just such a strong division. And obviously it's all great when we can all go beat up on the Nationals every once in a while. But like you said, the Braves just win baseball games, dude. I mean, obviously,
I hate the Braves.
what happened last night, but that was a brutal loss for them because they reffed up Monty and they still lost. But yeah, I'm just obviously, but to me, I still think that the Dodgers are the best team in the NL.
Yeah.
Like I just think
their pace is crazy.
talk about a team. They did lose. They did lose. They got Sandy masterclass yesterday, but this is a team. They're just a joke. I mean, I've talked about them a lot of successive weeks, but they're my World Series favorite. Freddie and Trey are just too good, and obviously Dustin. So I don't know. They're going to be a very hard team to beat. But like the NL, like NL is so strong.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, the one thing Walker Buehler having Tommy John, that was crazy. I didn't. They just like Walker Buehler. Just all of a sudden, it's just like boom, out for this year and next year. Kind of crazy. Hope he recovers. He's a great pitcher when healthy, obviously. But yeah, I mean, the Dodgers are just a different tier. I went to the game. The game they roughed up Sandy. I was expecting a Sandy masterclass, and they roughed up Sandy, and I was like, "Whoa! Like what the hell? Like it's weird to watch." I mean, they're just such a good team though, and you look at a guy like Joey Gallo who's gone there, and Joey Gallo has just been incredible there. I mean, he is just, and that's kind of what you expect. Like,
yeah,
like you just kind of expect that, and he's a good player. I just think the Yankees are just the disgusting.
I need your
Mom,
card.
I
understand. Where's your card?
doing podcasts right now.
Where's your card? In the other room?
Yeah, probably.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
You're good.
Sorry about that. Griff.
I can edit that out. You're good. But yeah, the Yankees. You're good. The Yankees are obviously, Joey Gallo struggled there. He's coming to the Dodgers, been great. The Dodgers are just loaded. Like the top of that lineup is just pure insanity. Like Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, Trey Turner, Max Muncy's been good. Joey Gallo's playing better. Justin Turner's pretty good. Will Smith. I mean, it's just ridiculous. The starting rotation is the only thing and the bullpen, I guess. So I guess the pitching is the only thing that you can look at and kind of be like, I guess really closer and starting pitching. And the starting pitching is pretty good. It's just they're just underrated guys like Tony Gonsolin. Heaney's been good. Tyler Anderson. Tyler Anderson was an all-star this year. I mean, the Dodgers are just stacked, man. They're going to be a tough team to beat. I think it's going to require elite starting pitching, and that's why I think the Mets have a shot. I think that offensively the Mets do not compare, but starting pitching wise, I just think the middle relief in the Mets, I think, is going to be their kryptonite. And if they do ultimately lose in the playoffs, it will probably it'll probably be because of that middle relief. But yeah, I mean, we're just rambling all over the place.
Yeah.
The NL East is just insane. It's going to be a very fun division down the stretch. Obviously, I think the Phillies are out of the division race at this point. They'll be a wild card team, obviously, but Mets Braves is going to be tight, and the whole NL is going to be very interesting. The AL, it really seems to be the AL wild card is actually pretty interesting. Even though I don't think any of those teams have a shot to do anything. Maybe the Mariners do, or the Blue Jays if they get hot offensively. But I guess that J-Rod extension, like, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, if he was on the Atlanta Braves, obviously it would have been 11 years for $50 million. But, he got a pretty good payday.
Yeah, no, he did. And I think that incentive-laced contract is really interesting because, he could be making 200, but it's
I'm
crazy.
hoping that stops this I'm hoping that stops this Braves nonsense with these contracts, dude. Like I've never seen it's crazy. Like I'm expecting any day now, Dansby Swanson signs 6 years, $50 million extension. Just like some or Max Fried's extension. Oh my god.
Yeah. Yeah. No, this is a really good I'm just really interested to see this incentive-based contract because if this guy wins 2 MVPs, he's guaranteed 350. Basically, he just needs to be as good as everybody thinks he's going to be. Everybody thinks he's going to be, and he'll get, like you said though, it just sucks to see the across the country Mariners who will never play, and the tie up time down maybe not to this team friendly contract. And the Braves basically have 4 wage slaves out over there. I mean, it's ridiculous.
And they got Michael Harris. I get these guys want to get money quicker, and I'm all for it, but like, dude, come on, like, stop. It just gets ridiculous. Even Austin Riley's contract. Austin Riley's been a top three player in like the league this year, and obviously he got $200 million, which is like life changing money. And the guy's never gonna have to worry about spending whatever he can spend whatever he wants. But like, dude, you're making 21 mil a year. You could have been making like 35 mil a year. Like, it's just like, what are we doing?
Yeah,
Ugh.
I agree.
The Ozzy Albies contract's the cream of the crop, though. That's the greatest one. What is it, 7 for 35 or something?
Correct. For 35, $5 million a year. Great.
Oh my god! And he's like a 2-3-time All-Star.
Yeah.
It's just like, dude, their voodoo magic is like something else. Like every series, it's like Mike Trout, he's gonna be out this series. Nolan Arenado had like a kid the first game of the Cardinals series. Like, I don't know what is going on. Like it doesn't even make sense.
Yeah, they just keep winning, except for last night. But they just keep winning.
Yeah, they'll probably rip off like a 12-game win streak now after last night's loss. But yeah, I mean, I feel like that kind of does it for now. I don't think there's too much more to talk about in terms of MLB. Obviously, though, NFL 2 weeks from today is the first day of the. Obviously we're less than 2 weeks from the first game of the season, which is going to be a heck of a game. Bills Rams, what a game! But I mean, I'm super excited for this NFL season. We're obviously going to be covering more and more as we get closer. So next week, stay tuned. We'll probably tap into some, weekly predictions, maybe for week 1. Maybe we'll do some fantasy football stuff, even though I know a lot of people will have drafted by then, but still some fun fantasy stuff. Thank you guys for watching, though. I know it's a little bit of a long episode, a lot to talk about, but it's been a fun one. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Follow us on Instagram at Outside the Arena Podcast. Our Instagrams will be in the description as well if you want to check us out there. And yeah, expect a lot of fun content coming soon. We'll see you all next week on Outside the Arena.